A shy librarian's simple medical appointment becomes a dangerous game of hearts when she meets a mysterious doctor hiding deadly secrets. What starts as an innocent checkup spirals into obsession, betrayal, and a love that could destroy them. Both. This emotional roller coaster will keep you on the edge of your seat until the shocking finale. Welcome, cherished viewers. Tonight's chapter is woven with passion, betrayal, and the kind of love that changes everything. Let's dig in. The scalpel gleamed under the surgical lights as Dr. James Harrison's hands trembled for the first time in his career. Blood stained the pristine white coat that had once made him feel invincible. 3 floors below, Sophia Chen sat in the waiting room, nervously clutching a worn paperback, completely unaware that her life was about to collide with a man drowning in his own darkness. 6 hours earlier, Sophia's reflection stared back at her from the cracked bathroom mirror of her studio apartment. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook as she applied lipstick with the precision of someone trying to convince herself. She was brave. The Elite Medical Center appointment card sat on her dresser like a small white threat. "You can't keep avoiding this," she whispered to herself, repeating Emma's words from the night before. But Emma didn't know about the panic attacks. Emma didn't know about the nights. Sophia woke up gasping, her heart racing from dreams she couldn't remember. The bus ride downtown felt like traveling to another planet. Glass towers stretched toward the California sky, their surfaces reflecting a world Sophia had never belonged to. The medical center loomed ahead, all marble and crystal, designed to intimidate rather than comfort. In the lobby, Sophia felt like an imposter in her simple blue dress. Designer heels clicked against polished floors as wealthy patients moved past her with practiced confidence. She approached the reception desk, her voice barely audible. "Sophia Chen, 2 o'clock appointment." The receptionist's smile was perfect, practiced. "Dr. Harrison will see you shortly. He's one of our most dedicated doctors." Something in the woman's tone made Sophia look up, but the receptionist had already turned away. 20 minutes later, a nurse led Sophia down a corridor lined with expensive art. Each painting seemed to watch her pass, their eyes following her toward an unknown fate. "Dr. Harrison is ready for you," the nurse said, her voice strangely gentle, almost pitying. The office was a monument to success. Medical degrees covered one wall like trophies, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that probably cost more than Sophia made in a year. Behind the mahogany desk sat a man who looked nothing like her expectations. Dr. James Harrison was young, maybe 30, with sandy hair and brown eyes that should have been warm but carried something cold and desperate. His white coat was immaculate, his smile practiced, but when their eyes met, Sophia saw something that made her breath catch. Fear. This successful, wealthy doctor was afraid. "Miss Chen," he said, standing with fluid grace. "I'm Dr. Harrison. Thank you for choosing our clinic." His handshake lingered a moment too long, and Sophia noticed his fingers were ice cold, despite the warm office. When he smiled, it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Please sit," he continued, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I've reviewed your file. It says you haven't seen a doctor in several years." "Busy," Sophia lied, settling into the leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Busy avoiding something?" The question was gentle, but his eyes were too intense, as if her answer mattered more than it should. Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Maybe, for the first time, his smile seemed genuine. "We're all avoiding something, Miss Chen. The question is whether we're brave enough to face it when the time comes." The words felt loaded with meaning she couldn't grasp. As he began his examination, asking standard questions about her health, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that this was about more than medicine. "Your heart rate is elevated," he noted, fingers on her wrist. His touch was warm now, almost electric. "Are you nervous? Terrified?" she admitted. "Of me?" The question hung in the air between them. Sophia looked into his eyes and saw something that made her pulse quicken further. Not just fear now, but hunger. Desperation. Need. "I should be," she whispered. Dr. Harrison's hand stilled on her wrist. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his pager buzzed, shattering the spell. He glanced at the device in his face, went deadly pale. "I'm sorry, Miss Chen. There's an emergency. We'll need to reschedule." But as he stood, Sophia saw his hands were shaking. And when he turned toward the door, she caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. Red stains on the back of his pristine white coat. Fresh red stains that looked suspiciously like blood, doctor, she called out, but he was already gone, leaving her alone in the elegant office, with one terrifying question echoing in her mind. What kind of emergency required that much blood? Sophia couldn't sleep. 3 days had passed since the appointment that ended in blood and mystery. Dr. Harrison's desperate eyes haunted her dreams. She'd researched him obsessively, finding articles about his groundbreaking cardiac surgery techniques and his work with terminal patients. Nothing explained the fear she'd seen in his face or the blood on his coat. The knock on her apartment door came. At 9:47 p.m., she wasn't expecting anyone. Emma always texted first, and her landlord never bothered with courtesy calls. Through the peephole, she saw a figure in an expensive coat, face shadowed by the dim hallway light. "Miss Chen." The voice was unmistakably his. "It's Dr. Harrison. We need to talk." Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed danger, but she opened the door anyway. He stood in her doorway like a man barely holding himself together, his perfect composure cracked. "How did you find my address?" "Your file," he said simply. "May I come in?" She should have said no. Should have called the police. Instead, she stepped aside and let him enter her tiny world of second-hand furniture and overflowing bookshelves. He moved through her space like a predator, taking in every detail with those intense brown eyes. When he stopped at her bookshelf, running his fingers along worn spines, something shifted in his expression. "Dostoevsky, Poe? You like dark stories?" he observed. "I like truth," Sophia replied, finding her courage. "Then you seem allergic?" "To, doctor." He turned to face her, and in the soft lamplight, she could see exhaustion carved into his features. He saw the blood. It wasn't a question. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. "Wait. I need you to understand something," he said, moving closer. "What you saw, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it was." For a moment, she thought he might. His lips parted, words seeming to form, but then his phone buzzed. The sound made him flinch like a physical blow. He glanced at the screen and his face went ashen. "I have to go." Wait, his first name slipped out before she could stop it. "Whatever you're involved in, whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone." He stopped at her door, his back to her. "You don't understand, Sophia. You're the librarian who loves books and believes in happy endings. I'm the monster who destroys everything he touches. I don't believe that." He turned, and the raw pain in his eyes took her breath away. "You should." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of expensive cologne and the echo of her own heartbeat. The next evening, Sophia was cataloging returns when she noticed him. James sat at a corner table in the library's quiet reading section, a medical journal open before him. But his eyes weren't on the pages. They were on her. She approached slowly, hyper-aware of the few other patrons scattered throughout the building. "Are you following me now?" "Yes," he admitted without shame. "I can't seem to stay away." The honesty in his voice made her knees weak. She slid into the chair across from him, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. "When did you last sleep?" "Sleep is a luxury I can't afford." He closed the journal and leaned back. "Tell me about your parents." The sudden change of subject caught her off guard. "They died when I was 12. Car accident." "I'm sorry." His voice carried genuine compassion. "That's why you avoid doctors, isn't it? Hospitals remind you of loss." Sophia stared at him, uncomfortable with how icily he read her. "Your parents?" Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "They're dead too, but not from an accident." Before she could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at the screen, his face went from pale to terrified. "I have to leave now." He stood abruptly, then paused. "Sophia, if something happens to me, if you hear things about me in the news, remember this moment. Remember that not everything is what it seems. James, you're scaring me. Good, he said grimly. Fear might keep you alive. He started to leave. Then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, these past few days, thinking about you, it's the only peace I've had in years. Then he was walking away, leaving Sophia with a dozen unasked questions and a growing certainty that Dr. James Harrison was either the most dangerous man she'd ever met, or the most desperate. As she watched him disappear into the night, she didn't notice the black sedan that had been parked across the street for the past hour, or the way its occupants followed his every move. She didn't see the man in the passenger seat raise a camera and take a series of photos of James, of the library, of her, but she would learn about them soon enough. Because Sophia Chen had just become a target in a game she didn't understand, played by people who killed without conscience, and Dr. James Harrison. The man she was falling for despite every rational thought in her head, was about to discover that loving someone made them both expendable. The scream that shattered the night came from the apartment above Sophia's. She bolted upright in bed, heart racing, as heavy footsteps thundered across the ceiling. Then came the sound of breaking glass and a man's voice, low and threatening. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but it buzzed in her hand first. A text from an unknown number. Stay inside. Lock your doors. Don't trust anyone. Before she could reply, another message appeared. They know about you now. Sophia's blood turned to ice. Through her thin walls, she heard Mrs. Patterson from upstairs sobbing, pleading with someone. The footsteps moved toward the stairwell. They were coming down. She killed the lights and crept to her window, peering through the blinds. 3 black SUVs surrounded her building. Men in dark suits stood at every exit, speaking into earpieces with military precision. Her phone buzzed again. Fire escape. Now I'm in the alley. Every rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane, that running toward James instead of away from him was suicide. But when she heard her apartment door handle rattle, instinct took over. She grabbed her jacket and slipped out onto the fire escape, her bare feet silent on the metal grating. The alley below was pitch black except for a single figure standing beside a motorcycle. James looked up at her with desperate urgency. Jump, are you insane? Probably, but I'm also your only chance of surviving the night. The sound of splintering wood came from inside her apartment. It had broken down her door. Sophia didn't think. She jumped. James caught her with surprising strength, his arms solid and warm around her trembling body. For a moment, they were pressed together in the darkness, and she could feel his heart racing as fast as hers. Hold tight, he murmured against her ear. Then they were flying through the empty streets on his bike, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and red. 20 minutes later, the safe house was a modest cabin tucked into the Hollywood Hills, all rough wood and stone that felt like another world from James's polished office. Inside, he moved with practiced efficiency, checking windows, securing locks, while Sophia sat on a worn leather couch trying to process what had just happened. Who were those men? James poured 2 glasses of whiskey, his hand steady now, despite the circumstances, people who want me dead. And now, thanks to me, they want you dead too. The casual way he said it made her stomach lurch. Why? He sat across from her, the glass trembling slightly in his grip. Because I'm not really Dr. James Harrison. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sophia stared at him, searching his face for some sign that this was an elaborate joke. Then who are you? My real name is James Chen. Yes, like yours. We're cousins, Sophia, 3rd cousins, but family nonetheless. The room spun around her. That's impossible. Your grandmother never told you about her sister who moved to San Francisco, who married a Chinese-American businessman named Chen. Sophia's mind raced. Her grandmother had been secretive about family, always changing the subject when Sophia asked about relatives. Even if that's true, it doesn't explain why people are trying to kill us. James leaned forward, his eyes intense. 5 years ago, my parents were murdered, not in an accident, not from illness. Murdered by a man named Vincent Marchetti, who runs the largest illegal organ trafficking ring on the West Coast. organ trafficking. The words tasted like poison. My father was a surgeon, a good man who discovered what Marchetti was doing, stealing organs from desperate patients and selling them to the highest bidder. When my father tried to expose him, Marchetti had them both killed. Sophia felt sick. And you've been hunting him? I became Dr. Harrison, got a job at Elite Medical, and spent 3 years gathering evidence. The blood you saw on my coat? I just finished photographing Marchetti's latest victim. Why didn't you go to the police? James laughed bitterly. Half the police force is on his payroll. The FBI agent I trusted turned out to be working for him too. I've been doing this alone, until now. He looked at her sharply. No, you're not getting involved in this. I already am involved. Sophia stood pacing to the window. They broke into my apartment. They know who I am. There's no going back. I can get you new papers, a new identity. You can disappear, start over somewhere safe. She turned to face him. And leave you to get yourself killed? Better me than both of us. Is that what your parents would want? For you to die for revenge? The question hit him like a physical blow. He stood abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. Don't you dare talk about what they would want. Someone has to. You're so focused on destroying the man who killed them that you're destroying yourself in the process. He doesn't deserve to live. Maybe not, but you do. The words seemed to break something in him. He sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. I've killed people, Sophia. In the name of justice, I've become everything I hate. She moved to sit beside him, her hand finding his. Then let's find another way. He looked up at her, vulnerability raw in his eyes. Why do you care? You barely know me. I look at you, I see someone worth saving. Because you're family. The only family I have left. For a moment, the weight of shared loss hung between them. Then James's phone rang, shattering the fragile peace. He glanced at the screen, and his face went white. It's them. They have Emma. Sophia's blood froze. What? James showed her the phone. A photo of Emma bound to a chair, terror in her eyes, with a message. You have 2 hours to bring us the evidence and the girl. Otherwise, your friend dies slowly. VM Sophia felt her. World collapse. This is my fault. I brought Emma into this. No, James said grimly, standing and moving toward a locked cabinet. This is mine. He pulled out a gun, checking the chamber with movements that spoke of long practice. I'm going to get her back. We're going to get her back. He turned to her, his expression fierce. Absolutely not. She's my best friend. My responsibility. And you're mine now, he said, the words carrying more weight than either of them expected. I won't let anything happen to you. But as he holstered the weapon, Sophia was already forming her own plan, because she'd just realized something. That changed everything. She wasn't the helpless victim in this story. She was the key to ending it. The warehouse on the outskirts of downtown LA looked like every abandoned building in every noir film Sophia had ever watched. Rusted metal, broken windows, and the kind of silence that promised violence. But this wasn't a movie, and the gun, hidden in her jacket, wasn't a prop. James paced beside their stolen car, checking his weapon for the 3rd time. You stay here, engine running. If things go bad, you drive away and don't look back. We've been over this. Emma is in there because of me. Emma's in there because of Vincent Marchetti's sick games. This isn't your fault, but Sophia wasn't. Listening anymore? Through the grimy warehouse windows, she could see figures moving. Too many figures. This was a trap, and James was walking straight into it. James, she said quietly, what if there was another way? He stopped pacing. What do you mean? What if we could end this tonight? All of it. Marchetti, the organ trafficking, everything. His eyes narrowed. Sophia, what are you thinking? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Emma's number, come alone, or she dies. You have 5 minutes. VM James read over her shoulder, his face going pale. He's trying to separate us, then let him. Sophia turned to face him fully. I'm going in. Like hell you are. Listen to me. She grabbed his hands, forcing him to look at her. You said you've been gathering evidence for 3 years? Or is it hidden in my apartment? But Sophia, if something happens to you tonight, that evidence dies with you. Marchetti wins. James shook his head. I won't let you sacrifice yourself, and I won't let you. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. When she pulled back, his eyes were wild. I love you, James Chen. Real name, fake name, I don't care. But I won't watch you die for the dead. Don't do this. She was already walking toward the warehouse. 5 minutes. If I'm not out, go to the police. Tell them everything, Sophia. But she was running now, disappearing into the maze of shipping containers that surrounded the building. Inside the warehouse, Vincent Marchetti was exactly what Sophia had expected from James's description. Silver-haired, expensively dressed, with cold eyes that had seen too much death. He sat behind a metal table like a king holding court, while Emma knelt nearby, duct tape across her mouth and terror in her eyes. Miss Chen, Marchetti said pleasantly, so good of you to join us. Sophia forced herself to walk forward calmly, even as she counted the men positioned around the warehouse. 8 that she could see, probably more hidden. Let her go. I'm here, yes you are. But unfortunately, you're not who I really want. That's when Sophia heard footsteps behind her. Heavy, familiar footsteps. She turned, and her heart shattered. James walked into the warehouse with his hands raised, flanked by 2 armed men, but that wasn't what destroyed her. It was the expression on his face. Cold, calculating, nothing like the desperate, passionate man she'd kissed minutes before. Hello, Vincent, James said casually. Sorry I'm late, Marchetti smiled. James, my boy, right on time. The world tilted on its axis. Sophia stared at James, trying to understand. What is this? Marchetti said, standing his business. You see, dear girl, James here has been working for me all along. That's not true. But even as she said it, pieces were falling into place. The expensive clothes, the perfect job at an elite clinic, the way he'd found her apartment so easily. James finally looked at her, and the stranger wearing his face spoke. I needed someone innocent, someone believable, librarian with no connections. No suspicious background. You were perfect. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. The men who broke into my apartment? Mine, Marchetti confirmed. A bit of theater to make the threat seem real. And Emma. Sophia looked at her best friend, who was staring at James with fury. She got too curious about your new doctor friend. Started asking questions we couldn't afford to have answered. Sophia felt her knees buckle. Everything had been a lie. The connection she'd felt, the way he'd looked at her, the desperate kisses and whispered confessions. Why? She whispered. For the first time, something flickered in James's eyes, because I needed you to trust me completely, and you did. Marchetti clapped slowly. Beautiful work, James. Though, I think our librarian is having trouble processing the truth. But Sophia was processing more than they realized, because while her heart was breaking, her mind was working furiously, and she'd just noticed something that changed everything. The gun tucked into James's waistband, same gun he'd shown her at the cabin, the same gun he'd checked obsessively in the car. The gun that was now pointing directly at Vincent Marchetti's back, invisible to everyone except her. Their eyes met across the warehouse, and for just a moment, she saw the man she'd fallen in love with, desperate, damaged soul who'd been playing a part even more dangerous than hers. James, she said quietly, I understand. And she did. Finally, she understood everything. James smiled then, cold and cruel for Marchetti's benefit. But his finger was already moving to the trigger. Goodbye, Sophia, he said. The gunshot that followed echoed through the warehouse like thunder, but it wasn't Sophia who fell. Vincent Marchetti crumpled to the concrete floor, blood spreading beneath his expensive suit like spilled wine. The warehouse erupted into chaos as his men scrambled for weapons, shouting orders that no one was listening to. Sophia, the gun still smoking in his hand. Get Emma, now. But Sophia was already moving, diving toward her friend as bullets began flying overhead. She ripped the tape from Emma's mouth, her fingers fumbling with the ropes that bound her wrists. Sophia, What the hell is happening? Emma gasped. Long story. Can you run? Tell me through. Try and stop me. James had taken cover behind a shipping container, returning fire with deadly precision. 3 years of planning had taught him more than medical procedures. But they were outnumbered, and more of Marchetti's men were pouring in through the warehouse entrances. Back exit, he shouted to Sophia. There's a car waiting. What about you? I'll hold them off. Like hell. Sophia pulled Emma to her feet. We all leave together, or nobody leaves. That's when she saw him. Marcus Webb, the FBI agent James had trusted, the one who'd turned out to be on Marchetti's payroll. He was creeping along the warehouse wall, positioning himself behind James with a rifle. Sophia didn't think. She grabbed a piece of rebar from the floor and threw it with all her strength. It struck Webb in the shoulder, spinning him around just as he pulled the trigger. The bullet meant for James's heart hit him in the chest instead. He went down hard, his weapon skittering across the concrete. Sophia started toward him, but Emma grabbed her arm. There are more coming. We'll have to go. Sophia looked toward the exit, then back at James, who was struggling to sit up against the container, blood staining his shirt. Their eyes met across the chaos of gunfire and shouting. Go, he mouthed. She shook her head. I love you, he said, loud enough for her to hear over the noise. That was never a lie. The warehouse was filling with smoke now. Someone had started a fire, probably to destroy evidence. Through the haze, Sophia could see more men approaching from multiple directions. She made her choice. Emma, run. Get. To the police? Tell them everything, Sophia. No? But Sophia was already racing toward James, dodging between containers as bullets sparked off metal around her. She reached him just as Webb was raising his rifle again. This time, it was James who moved without thinking. Despite his wound, he lunged upward, tackling Webb and sending them both crashing into a stack of crates. The impact was brutal. Webb's neck snapped on the concrete with a sickening crack. James rolled away, clutching his chest, blood seeping between his fingers. You stupid, beautiful fool, he gasped as Sophia knelt beside him. You should have run. I'm done running, she said, helping him to his feet, and so are you. The fire was spreading faster now, eating through years of stored documents and evidence that would never see a courtroom. But as they stumbled toward the exit, Sophia realized it didn't matter, because James had been recording everything. The wire hidden in his jacket had captured Marchetti's confession. The backup drive in his pocket contained 3 years of evidence, and Emma had heard everything. They made it to the car, just as the warehouse roof collapsed in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Emma was waiting behind the wheel, tears streaming down her face. Drive, James said, collapsing into the passenger seat. Hospital now. 3 weeks later. The headlines had been spectacular. Organ trafficking ring destroyed. FBI corruption exposed. Hero doctor saves lives, catches killers. James had become a celebrity, which he hated, but the evidence he'd gathered had led to 17 arrests and the shutdown of Marchetti's entire operation. The dead man's empire of suffering was finally over. Sophia found him on the hospital roof staring out at the city lights. His chest was still bandaged, but he was healing, physically at least. The reporters are gone, she said, settling beside him on the bench. Good, I'm tired of being a hero. You've saved lives. Hundreds of them. I also lied to you, used you, put you in danger. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember what you asked me in your office? About being brave enough to face what we're avoiding? He nodded. I was avoiding living, really living. I was hiding in books and safe routines because I was afraid of being hurt again. And you were avoiding living too. You were so focused on revenge that you forgot what you were supposed to be fighting for. What's that? The future. Our future. James turned to look at her fully. After everything I've done, everything I've put you through, you still want a future with me? James Chen, she said, using his real name. And dangerous and probably going to need years of therapy, but you're also brave and brilliant and willing to sacrifice everything for justice. Yes, I want a future with you, if you want one with me. He leaned over and kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. When they pulled apart, he was smiling for the first time since she'd known him. So what happens now? she asked. Now we figure out how to be normal people. Think a doctor and a librarian can make it work? Sophia laughed. Stranger things have happened. Not much stranger. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city spread out below them like a carpet of stars. Two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness, who'd chosen love over fear, justice over revenge. There would be nightmares and trust issues and the long work of healing, but they would face it together. And for the first time in years, both of them were finally truly alive. The end.